They are feeling it. And Robert Gibbs, a former White House press secretary under President Obama and an MSNBC contributor, is joining us now to talk more about this, the messaging really coming out of the Biden administration with all this. So Robert, great to have you, by the way. Thanks for joining us on this. It seems as if the messaging coming out of the Biden administration, talking about the economy, as we just heard from Secretary Raimondo there, obviously, is the economy is quite strong. But nonetheless, when you go to the grocery store, you're paying a heck of a lot more today than you were 6 months ago or a year ago, right? And you're looking at the approval rating for the president right now at record lows, not a place that he necessarily wants to be as we march towards the midterm elections. How do they turn it around when it comes to their messaging on the economy? When you have kind of these positive numbers, gas prices in some places going below, $4 a gallon, nonetheless, Americans still seeing it as not a good place for him.
Yeah, I think Secretary Raimondo hit it pretty well in that clip you showed. I think you have to, it's really important you live where people live, right?
Yeah.
First, understanding that the top line of the economy, the jobs report was strong on Friday, but also I think underscoring again, where people live, it's more expensive at the grocery store. It's more expensive to buy lots of different goods. It's certainly more expensive to go to the gas station and fill up. I think politically for the White House and for Democrats, it's about a line of improvement here, right? You mentioned gas prices are down. We saw the jobs report again, which was strong. It'll be interesting this week. We'll get two different measures, consumer price index. What's inflation done over the past month? We'll get those numbers on Wednesday. And then on Friday, the University of Michigan's Consumer Confidence Survey will give us a sense of how do consumers feel about what's coming. And what's interesting about that, in June, the Michigan survey hit an all-time low. So none of this is going to get fully solved by the time voters go to the polls in November. But the question is the line of trajectory one that's improving or one that's declining? That's going to be really important for Democrats this November.
So I found it interesting. Dana Milbank wrote this op-ed in the Washington Post basically saying give the president a break. Because it seems as if there's a lot of criticism out there when it comes to the president's handling of course, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, gun rights in this country as well, that he's not necessarily providing the urgency that one needs, that activists want, of course, when it comes to dealing with these scenarios. Nonetheless, I mean, he doesn't mince words, and he hasn't at all along the way. He said straight up after Uvalde, there is nobody that needs an AR, right? He wants to see an all-out ban on ARs. He wants to codify Roe, but his hands are tied, right? He's in a very difficult position right now.
Undoubtedly. Look, I've spent enough time in the White House and looked hard enough to find the magic wand to fix everything, and it just simply doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there isn't frustration from Democrats or from the base on this. I think it's important first to underscore what's been accomplished. I mean, the first sensible gun control legislation that really has been passed in 3 decades just happened. So I think that's important to underscore. But I think for this White House, understanding there isn't as much they can do with a 50-50 Senate and a filibuster, tone is really important. And I think though the president's words were right the morning of the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe, Democrats didn't feel that urgency. I think on Friday, when the president spoke and signed those executive orders, that began to feel a little bit more like he fully understood the moment of 50 years of rights being washed away. So I think for whether it's on guns, whether it's on abortion, a lot of these issues that the president doesn't have a legislative solution for at the moment, tone is really going to matter.
Do you mean tone? Immediate reaction, or tone in the president's delivery? Because that's also just reflective of who he is and how he communicates. He's not a communicator like the former President Donald Trump. He's not a communicator like former President Obama either. So are you talking tone when it comes to delivery, or actually actions like signing that executive order, which provides protections? But obviously he can't codify Roe. It's impossible for him to do.
No, I mean tone in his remarks. And I think, again, I think you began to see that a bit more on Friday. And look, we remember when you heard him after Uvalde, we felt it.
Yeah.
You could feel the frustration in his voice. And I think that's what Democrats have to see is that tone of the understanding of the moment that we're in. I have no doubt the policy is going to be what many Democrats want to see, even if it's not going to be fast enough. But I think really important for the White House to get the tone of his remarks right. And you mentioned it. Look, you can't go out there. He can't go out there and be somebody he's not. But he's worked on many of these issues for a long time. And I think when we hear and feel the heartfelt Joe Biden, that comes through. We certainly felt it and heard it after Uvalde. But you could tell those were remarks he was giving that weren't necessarily the ones on the teleprompter. They were coming directly from his heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Gibbs, as always, it's great to have you on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.